Now, last week, as part of the listening project on BBC Tees, we heard from Gordon and Paula. They were talking openly for the first time about Tourette's syndrome. Gordon hid his tics from Paula for 6 years until the strain of suppressing his Tourette's nearly broke their relationship. Openly acknowledging his Tourette's now has brought Gordon and Paula closer together, but at times his behaviour can still be challenging. And I spoke to the couple earlier.
The day that it all came to a head and Gordon came and told me that he'd been to the doctors and been diagnosed with Tourette's, I got one of them images of everything flashes back and all the incidences that had happened in the past. I was sort of I remember that was Tourette's, that was Tourette's, that was Tourette's. And I just felt so bad. Maybe some of the times in the past I'd shouted and fallen out with him and thinking it was just him. And then when he came and told me that, it just completely blew the lid off everything. It was the one thing I wasn't expecting him to say. When he said he'd been to the doctors and he would talk to me later, I expected something. I found a lump, or I've not been very well, or something like that. And when he come out with that, it was just completely out the blue. It shocked me.
Just give us an insight into what it's like to live with someone with the condition. I mean, what comes to mind is the time that Gordon held an iron up to your face, did you?
Yeah, he ironed his face.
So you've still got that. I mean, what's that like for you to be knowing that day in, day out, there's a real threat to his life?
It is. But because we have a 7-year-old son, I sometimes feel like I have to watch Gordon like my son. So if I'm ironing and our little lad comes up towards us, it's like, mind, the iron's hot, don't go near the iron. I have to say the same thing to Gordon. It is like having another child in the house. With having the amount of children that we have between us and our little 7-year-old running around, sometimes I feel like he is another child.
I think the difference is as well, if she says mind the iron to our little one, he will mind the iron. If she says it to me, I'll then go looking for it.
Yeah, I have to remember what I'm saying and word it correctly. Because if I say to Gordon, don't do that, he will do it. It's really weird. It's really hard to get your head around, because there was one time that he said something about a knife. There was a knife in the kitchen and I was just stood there and he said, I feel like I need to do this. I said, well, do it. And then he just looked at me and he went, well, I don't want to do it now.
And what goes through your mind, Gordon?
There's like the sensible part of me that knows that some of the things I'm doing are wrong and dangerous, but then there's that when you get the intrusive thought and it carries on and you obsess on it, it builds up like a lot of pressure and anxiety, and the will to do it is a lot stronger than your self-control, and you know eventually that you're going to do it. So my technique now is it sounds daft, I'll run straight to Paula. It's like, right, I've thought of doing this, and then we'll do something to remove it. I'd been using the hand blender for years to make my health drinks, and then one day it just popped in my head to put my fingers in the end, and so I went straight. I said, when I'm out of the house, will you hide that? And I've never seen the blender since. I've thought about it, and that's one of the things, is that things pop in my head and I remember things that I've been obsessing on. Is
that difficult for you, knowing that you have to rely on her and have her speaking to you a bit like she was your mum?
Yeah, it can be sometimes, but I'm starting to accept that that's where I have to do things now, unless we find another way of getting around it.
But it's all learning. I mean, it's only been, 2 years that you've been diagnosed, and I'm still finding it difficult now. I'm still finding new things out. I'm still trying to understand. It's trying to distinguish who's the man I fell in love with. Was it Gordon, or was it Gordon with Tourette's? And then trying to figure out who he is today. And it's just living with it, hovering over us. You know, you just never know what's going to come next.
Yeah, because Paula's had 2 years of dealing with it, whereas I've had it from being a very small child. So I've known my whole life these things are going on. But then lived two lives, one life inside myself and another side on the outside, trying to fit in without standing out.
Gordon and Paula there speaking to me about their experience of living with Tourette's syndrome, and one of the biggest challenges that Gordon's had is to face employment.
Yeah, I'd worked there for about 5 years, and I'd managed to control myself quite a bit at work. I have techniques where if I've got an eye tick going on, I can cover my eyes or turn away. People might just catch a bit of a blink and just think there's something in my eye. Or some of my noises, I would time them when people wouldn't hear them. My vocals would be timed as well to fit in or turn it into a sentence. So if I ticked like a word at someone, I might make it a sentence and it wouldn't seem out of character. It got to a point where I was getting worse and I was finding it harder to control myself, and I did go to see my GP. That's when I told Paula, and the first thing did was go to work as well, and I told work, and I got quite a lot of support at first from my colleagues. Were really good around me, and the management, and then they had a change of store manager, and the support seemed to drop off, and the attitude of the store manager wasn't really what I was expecting. And that was the first time in my life as well I'd introduced myself to someone as Gordon with Tourette's, and that was to that store manager, and the reaction I got was quite negative. And I eventually lost my job. A few things happened. I'd tried medication which affected my memory a lot, affected the way I was acting. I was going through periods of time where I didn't know what I was doing, and certain things happened at work which they class as gross misconduct. I explained my condition to them, and their attitude was that my condition was what they'd seen on the telly, was just tics and vocals, and that the OCD, the memory trouble, the defiance disorder, all them sides, they didn't accept existed, or it didn't exist with me. I've got so far through a court battle with them, and it got too much for me mentally, on my mental health. So I decided for my own mental well-being, I had to end the case. I felt quite bullied and intimidated by some of the things that were said about me, and I do have a real big problem with lies. I got a letter from their solicitor, and there was quite a lot of lies in it, and my mental health worker had to talk to me on the phone for about an hour to help me get my head around that, because I just couldn't think straight. It's one of the things I can't deal with is lies.
And that must have left you with a profound sense of injustice and misunderstanding, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I did email their chief executive, which I don't think he read the email. It got filtered all the way back down the chain, and in the email it was more or less just saying I don't want to take my court, I don't want compensation, and I don't want my job back. I just want them to talk to me with a bit of respect and to understand the condition as it is, and make changes for the future for anybody else with a mental health or a neurological condition. Because if you don't understand something, human nature is to push it away. And if you understand it, the people that take the time to understand are really, really helpful.
Gordon says he would find it difficult without the support of others who also have Tourette's. At the end of May, the Tourette's Family Friendship Festival takes place in Northumberland. It's been put together by Tourette's Action Group in the North East.
It's going to be my first meeting with other people who have got Tourette's. Well, of course, I was a little bit scared of meeting other people who have got Tourette's because of the I must admit, watching it on the telly, that's what you think is somebody with Tourette's, and when you live with somebody with it, it's not like that at all. And then Gordon's been to these meetings up in Scotland and come back and told me about all these people he's met, and people that are carers and people that have it. And it really frightened me. I was really scared to meet them, thinking, I wonder if I say the wrong thing. You know, the way that I deal with Gordon, I don't know whether I can be like that with the other people. And Gordon said, oh, they'll be fine. So when he said, oh, we're going off camping, I thought, oh, lovely. I'm going to be in a field with all of these people.
You've got to be yourself.
Yeah.
That is it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all people, we just have Tourette's.
Cracking couple. Really good to spend some time in their company. Gordon and Paula talking to me earlier. If Tourette's is something that has affected you, I'd like to hear from you this morning. Give me a call, 01642 225511, particularly with regards to finding work. We're hearing there about Gordon's case and how difficult he found it in employment. Tough, because it just sounded like the company just either weren't prepared or just didn't know about how to deal with people who have Tourette's. So give me a call. I'd like to hear about your stories if you have one. And after 11, we'll hear from Suzanne Dobson, who's from Tourette's Action.